Hi, Angie. Thank you so much for being here
Hi, Laura. So nice to meet you and see you.
and see you and spend time with you, a fellow Korean. Thank you so much for first agreeing to do this in such short notice. And it's always so nice to speak to other practitioners who are Korean American. So I'm just really excited to get to know you.
Yeah, same. Uh, it's nice to meet another fellow Korean American.
So I just want to start from your origin story, and you can take that as far back as you want, or just as recently as you want. But where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And yeah, I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. So, well, first of all, thank you for asking because sometimes I don't know. I feel like this may be like an Asian Asian thing or something or a female thing, but sometimes I feel like people interview me and they just want to know, okay, what are tips? What can I do? And they just kind of want information. And it's not very often that people just ask you about you. So I really appreciate that. Um, I'm a Korean American. I was born and raised in Southern California in a Protestant Christian family. And um, grew up near Los Angeles, and then I moved up to the Bay Area and went to school at Berkeley. And it's kind of funny because I went to Berkeley, which is very liberal, but I don't and like my friends were vegetarian or into esoteric things, but I really wasn't. I was like a goth. And and then when I moved to New York, I started studying more esoteric practices and becoming more spiritual. I think maybe because New York is so severe,
Mhm.
and coming from California, I I guess I was longing for more of that mellowness of California, I suppose. And so it's interesting because I like lived in Berkeley, and then when I started studying feng shui when I lived in New York, the school that I studied with, the founder actually lived in Berkeley,
Mm.
and I was kind of around a lot of the organizations that I'm a part of now in New York, but I was also around them in Berkeley, but they weren't visible to me at the time.
Mm.
Yeah. So and so I grew up Korean American, and basically mm, a pretty like normal kind of quiet life. And I grew up mostly around Caucasian people,
Mhm.
and I went to a private school. And I think I was one of two Asian people in my grade in a small class of like 120 people. And then I remember when I went to college at Berkeley, and there's a big Asian population in San Francisco. um it was like a big epiphany to realize, oh, like like people think Asians are pretty, because when I grew up, I was around all white people, like blonde, a lot of blondes, and so I just always thought that was like what was beautiful. And then I was really surprised to leave kind of that nest and then see the world, and go somewhere where different types of beauty was more appreciated.
Mm.
Yeah. And then yeah, do you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, um, well, first, I was gonna try to guess where you grew up,
Mhm.
but then I was like, that's not really important. But I was gonna ask, like, did you always have aspirations to kind of cultivate beauty around you?
I think so. Actually, growing up, I wanted to be an artist, like some kind of visual artist, and having, Korean parents, my mom and dad said, okay, you want to be an artist? Then you should be an architect. So, so they're like, that's like the acceptable version of being an artist.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it wasn't possible it wasn't something that they found acceptable. And I guess part of that was my own decision too, because I know that I need to be I need to have a level of stability.
Mhm.
So I also acknowledge that I take ownership of that decision. It wasn't just my parents, but that there was an influence there that it was important to have a stable kind of profession. Because I don't know about you, but my parents, they immigrated here to the States, and they just really wanted their children to be like perfect Americans.
Mhm.
So we didn't learn Korean. We didn't go to Korean school. We didn't really fit in with the other kids at Korean church because we didn't speak Korean. But my parents really wanted us to speak perfect English. Like my sister has a story, like she's a doctor, of course.
Of course.
And but and there she ended up she's a psychiatrist, and the first thing my parents said was, why can't you be a real doctor?
Hmm.
And then they also said, we don't want you to be a Koreatown doctor either. So it's like,
Ouch.
right, yeah, so that's very like they really just wanted us to speak perfect English and to assimilate
Mhm.
and to fit in really well and to have really good professions. But on the other hand, like they were like so present, so loving, and they invested their whole, like everything was for their kids, right?
Yeah, and we were talking about this a little bit before when we were getting to know each other, and I already feel like a kinship with you because I had a very similar upbringing where that really does erase who you are. It erases your identity because clearly we're Asian, right? And we have Asian
Mm,
last names, and there's like a fracture there because you can't identify necessarily with being Korean because you weren't born there, but then you're not necessarily American either because we're other. And so you find, at least I'll stop projecting. I found myself always trying to figure out who I was in every single situation, and in certain circumstances that helped me because I was very malleable to my environment, but then in certain times I felt like invisible. Like I nobody could see me or hear me because I had to just blend in with whatever was acceptable at the time.
um, I definitely have felt that too, especially that feeling of not being heard or being invisible. I think also because we're Asian and American, and there's something about Asian culture where there's a value put on being subtle and being quiet. And then on the other hand, in the US, I remember just feeling like growing up that people would say, you're too quiet.
Hmm.
You're not assertive enough. And then so there's this like always this push and pull and not knowing like where, I feel comfortable as a more quiet person, and but that was not so okay to be as an American. And I've actually talked about this with one of my healers, and she tried to, or she's had me kind of shift my perspective on that and look at it as a real gift, that because um, I didn't grow up really knowing how to communicate the way that an American, like you're supposed to communicate as an American, and it's kind of like somewhere in between. Because my parents don't speak really great English either. And so, and they always like they emphasize being quiet. So but that also allowed me to cultivate other gifts, like we'll be talking about more esoteric gifts, but like cultivate more different ways to communicate outside of just through words, like based on the Western perspective. But how do you communicate through energy? How do you communicate? How can you like communicate telepathically?
Hmm.
Or even like one of my profession, well, I have a few professions, but like I'm an architect, and I do feng shui, and I teach feng shui, and those weave together. um but with feng shui and with design, I communicate through pictures. I
Mhm.
don't communicate through like words, and it's about communicating through the space and through the energy and then the forms and also the space that the forms create.
Yes. And I can almost, without knowing you or speaking to you, when I looked at your Instagram, I like got that very clearly. I got what you were communicating with your images and your words without actually hearing your voice. And I'm just really curious, are you a Libra or like any Libra placements?
No, I don't think I have. I don't know all my planets by heart, but I know I'm a Leo sun and rising,
Hmm.
Cancer moon, and then the next three planets I have a Virgo stellium, I guess.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look at your chart because
Okay.
you're an architect who is into like spatial design and aesthetics, and that's like a very Libra thing. Um,
Hmm.
and the way that you see the world, and just from even when you were talking about your origin story, is like you make sense of this world through your space, and you have I don't even know what that's called, like spatial recognition, and I think it lends to like what you do. So um do you want to talk about how you got into, so you're an architect, and how did you get into the more, I guess, esoteric study of feng shui?
So, around my Saturn return, I took a big trip to Asia, but not to Korea. I went to Thailand, which is a very spiritual country, and Cambodia. And I went to, when I was in Thailand, I remember, I think I was in Chiang Mai and I was with my friend, and we were in this restaurant, and this Reiki practitioner, a Tibetan Reiki practitioner, approached us and he said, "Would you like a Reiki session?" And you practice Reiki too, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And I had never even heard of Reiki or anything. And my friend was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I was like, "Okay." So I had this Reiki session, and I had a huge epiphany. Like, I was crying. It was so emotional for me. And I just realized I had to change my entire life when I came back to New York, because New York was really, I was really like really depressed, really overwhelmed. I was miserable. And so I came back to New York, and I just realized I had to become more spiritual. I had to change things. So I started going to yoga. I started practicing meditation. And very soon after that, I just realized, I'm an architect, and this is what I do for a living. And how do I bring spirituality into what I do, like 9 to 12 or whatever hours a day? They work architects to the bone. Um, so my therapist, who's still my therapist now, we took a break, but we're back. Um, she recommended I look into feng shui. So I did, and uh, I was really delighted to find out that it was more than just moving furniture around, that it was a very deep practice. And then I had the aspiration to study in this certification program for a few years, but I always had like an excuse, like, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, whatever. And then in 2009, I got laid off. And at that time, like, you couldn't find a job if you wanted to.
Hmm.
And I wanted to, but I couldn't find a job. So I actually got my architect's license the same day that, or the same month I got laid off. I had been studying, doing my exams. I had to do 9 exams, and I got my license. And then I just decided, you know what, I'm going to follow my heart and do what I've always wanted to do and take this feng shui certification program. And my whole life changed. Like, I never wanted to be my own business. I never wanted to be like a business owner. I never wanted to be any kind of healer. I never wanted to be my own boss. Never wanted to write a book, be on whatever, social media, nothing, like had no aspirations for that. I was more like I want to just go to my job, get out of work and go like live my life, or get married. And so all of that changed because I started to really see huge shifts in my life. I had like real mentors for the first time in my life. Like actually one of my mentors officiated my wedding, and my whole life changed because of Feng Shui. Like I had no idea, but it really was it was a tool that helped me to start to see that I'm really great at manifesting things. If I want something, I can have it. What usually happens is that I get what I want and I realize I don't want it anymore.
Mhm.
That's like my problem. I'm like, oh, I don't really want this thing that I really wanted so badly. And so I'm always pivoting. But that's how I got started on my feng shui journey.
So, for those of the listeners who don't know what feng shui is, can you do like a little definition?
Mhm. So my definition of feng shui is it's a mindfulness practice of how to look at your spaces and look at your environment. It's about starting to look at all the details of the spaces around you and see that you are interconnected to everything that's around you. And so you influence your environment and your environment influences you. So we're not separate. And that's really the key to feng shui. And there's lots of other definitions, like feng shui literally translates to wind and water.
Mhm.
And I look at it as those are the two elements that humans or most living things need to thrive. We need breath, which is our wind, and we need to be hydrated, which is water. So it's really about looking at how we can thrive in our environments, how we interact with our spaces, and also how to live more in harmony with the natural world.
Mhm. Which I think all of us need, right?
Hmm.
I was sharing with you that I've been staying with my parents during the pandemic, and I don't know if I've ever shared this it publicly, but my dad has he's a hoarder, and and I believe that is a symptom of trauma. That's like an addiction, just as alcohol or drugs um, or overworking, but it's his unprocessed emotions that he feels the need to, and they're just nonsensical things too, right? They're just things that you're just like, what? But he feels like an emptiness inside and needs to acquire things, but it's not about the things, it's him within. And I don't know why I'm sharing this, like I brought like the mood down like this, but I just wanted to share that because like growing up, I've had to reconcile that as like an actual addiction, and also um, none of us, no matter how many times we try to clear the space or help him, like he needs to do that work on himself. And then also, I find myself not being able to concentrate and focus because there is just so much shit around, and I noticed that the more and more I'm in quarantine, the more and more I feel like I have attention deficit disorder because I can't focus because there's so much stuff. So I think what you were saying with our relationship to our things, it's more than that. I feel like it's energetic, obviously, and I feel like it just makes me feel all clogged up inside.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think even though it's not you that is the hoarder, there's so much shame around that too. People are embarrassed to say that their family member or their parent or someone that they live with is a hoarder, and it definitely is a disorder. I've seen I actually worked on a home that had belonged to a hoarder, and he actually we because it was when I worked at the last architecture place that I worked at, and me and my coworkers, we looked up the house because basically people had to go in with hazmat suits to clean up and
Yeah.
demo the place. And even after they came in with the hazmat suits and like me and my colleagues needed to go measure, I remember we found like a pot. There was like piles of clothes, and they had been sitting there so long they were starting to crumble. And then there was like the pots of food, like with food, like maybe 20 years old still in the pot. And then we looked up the former owner who had left the house like this. He had collected like 176 Pomeranians and just left them in a trailer upstate. And he would like throw in bags of food. It was so sad.
Oh my God.
And but it's really a disorder. So the SPCA, we saw, like we Googled it, and the SPCA came in with hazmat suits, and he went to court to try to get the Pomeranians back.
Oh my God.
He still wanted the Pomeranians. So it's definitely a disorder. And I think it's really, and it's also a modern disorder, right? Because for instance, when Feng Shui was developed, but only very recently do we have so many things. So as humans, I think we need to adapt and recognize that it's kind of a new disorder that we don't know how to work with yet. And so young people nowadays are very they're kind of going to the other end and becoming super minimal.
Yeah.
And then again, there's all that shame that is connected with having this disorder. But it also makes sense that you feel congested in your home because objects have energy. Like we're all made of energy, and objects also have energy. And so when you have an excess of objects, to the point where you're a hoarder. I mean, a lot of people are very judgmental about themselves and say that, oh, I have so much clutter. I mean, everyone, like when I go into their house, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, there's so much clutter. And I'm like, no, it's okay. You're not a hoarder. It's okay. But when you have so many things, the chi or the energy gets stuck because there's more energy. And then it's even more sticky when there's chi or emotions or anything accumulating with those objects.
Yes.
So like hopes and dreams or fears or energy from where the object came from, like all of that is memorized or imprinted in the walls that we have around us, as well as all the objects that we have around us.
Oh my gosh, you are just putting to words everything that I've been feeling too. And also I came back home to my child. This is how comfortable I feel with you because I'm just getting super vulnerable. But I came back to this home that I grew up in after 20 years because I left for college, obviously. And then 20 years later for the pandemic, I came back, and there was so much healing that I felt I had to do with my home, both on a metaphysical level and the actual physical home. Because there was a lot of, I mean, there was a lot of shit that went down here, and not all of it was good. And ever since I was a little girl, I wished to move and travel the world. And I left this home being like, bye. And then coming back here, I had to find my own safety and security again, like both me in my own physical home, my feeling about home, and then being in this physical four-walled space that is home. And I think that our relationship on all levels of that, like our relationship to our home, like our physical body and what we deem as home, right? And then the physical space that we call home is like a spiritual journey almost.
It is. And that's why I love working with spaces, because um, having a home, I think, is really important, even though I know you told me you're nomadic and a lot of people tell me that, but I really feel like we all yearn for a home and want to feel like stable and supported, and it's a connection to the earth, right?
Hmm.
And and in our homes, like, you know, you going back to your childhood home, it's like those, like, I don't know if you're in the room that you grew up in, but those walls have that energy imprinted in them. And also not just your current history, but there's also the energy of anyone that lived in the home before you, or ancestors on the land. And then also your ancestors walk around you too. And so they walk alongside us. So all of that energy is around us. And so a home can be super emotionally charged. And so, you know, our homes also need there needs to be energetic hygiene for our homes as well, like
Yes.
moving things around and clearing the space. um that just made me think of, like, you know, like you remember going to, like, it wasn't like my grandparents' home, but like I'd go to a friend's home, and
Mhm.
like we'd go to their grandparents' home and they'd have like the old 70s furniture, like nothing had changed, right? So you feel like you can feel it's so stagnant, because not only like can you feel the energy, but you can smell it,
Mhm.
and you could see dust accumulating. Like, you know, when a home is neglected, you can see it, you can see the dust, you could see like the dead insects in the light fixtures, and the home can tell you very clearly visually that it needs some care, because it will fall into disrepair.
So when you walk into someone's space, you can tell right away like where they're at, like mentally and
uh
physically and emotionally.
Actually, no, because it's sometimes when I meet people, they'll say, oh, you know, how's the feng shui of my home, but I have to actually put on my feng shui hat,
Hmm.
right? Because I don't know about you, like same for Reiki, right? You're not going to stay open all the time and perceptive,
Yeah.
or with any kind of energetic modality, because that's could be just exhausting. And so I turn that side of my consciousness off unless I'm asked to. So
Hmm.
there needs to be consent. There needs to be an exchange of energy. There needs to be permission, and there needs to be a clear request on the part of the other person.
Hmm.
Like they have to. My teachers would say they have to ring your bell.
Mm.
So they
Mhm.
have to ask. You
Yeah.
can't just volunteer. So I usually don't like kind of size up a space, but sometimes it's so overwhelming that, you know, yes, like I've stayed at places where immediately I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel good. But that's because I'm gonna have to stay there,
Yeah.
right? And so like sometimes I'll switch out the light bulbs, or I'll, you know, do a little clearing or something, because I'm staying there. But I wouldn't do that in someone else's space without their permission.
Hmm.
um so usually like I try to turn it off unless it's being asked for. But sometimes again, like, yeah, it's totally in your face. But most people have this ability, just like if you've ever looked for a new home,
Hmm.
you know that you go and look at different places, and you walk in, and some places you'll be like, no.
Yeah.
You're like, no. And then some places you're like, yeah, this feels good. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing that anyone could tune into and understands.
Yeah, I always hear people saying when we walk into a space, even like a restaurant, they'll be like, the vibes here are bad, or
Hmm.
that's the same feeling.
Yeah. And it's a combination of the energy, but also maybe the mundane aspects, like the care and attention that was put into the decorative aspects of the space, all of that, as well as the people in the space, the time, the atmosphere. It's all being present with what's happening in that moment. Like what's happening as soon as you walk into that space, and how do you feel?
Hmm. I would like to get a little bit more technical now. So when you walk into a space and you are putting on your feng shui hat,
Mhm.
somebody has hired you and they're like, help me with this space. And I'm assuming that people hire you so that they can get the most energy flow. And when you get the most energy flow, energy that you want flows to you. And so what are the first things that like feel, or you try to tune yourself to? Is it like the position of the furniture in conjunction to the like north, south, east, like the four directions, or is it more, well, I'll just let you explain it.
That's a really great question. So there's actually dozens of schools of feng shui, just like there's dozens of chocolate chip recipes, right? And or bread recipes. And the school that I teach and practice is called the BTB school, or the Black Sect. And it's more of an intuitive, more modern approach. And so when I work with the client, I actually the energy work starts even before I go to their home or before I get on a call with them, because I do mostly Zoom consultations now, and most of the time I'm working with my students actually. So I do home consultations for my students and then for other clients. So the first thing that they send me is their floor plan. And that's the most important tool, because a floor plan is a symbol of their space. So actually I look at what their wishes are. And so I ask for 3 wishes. And then
Like a
I look at,
genie?
I guess, oh my God, I never thought of that. Yes. Like, but because, it's so interesting, like, because my students are starting to tell me, like, sometimes people will say, I would like to correct my stove in front of the front door, which is kind of like saying to your acupuncturist, I'd like to work on my meridian 53 or whatever. It's like, well, maybe you should just like have the expert tell you what you need to work on, evaluate your energy, right? Or like, oh, dentist, my molar 13, I think I need a root, whatever, you have someone tell you. But so I look at the floor plan, and then I actually like start to look at the design details. So it's actually, that part is not so energetic, actually. It's really just reading the floor plan based on the design details, laying the Bagua map, seeing like where the doors happen, the relationship of everything. And also, but energetically, you read what they've given to you. So sometimes the client has drawn their own floor plan. Sometimes they have a builder's plan. You see everything that comes together. And so I look at all of that. And then I also look at their birth dates and check their astrology and then their numerology. And then I do a meditation, basically, where I call in like Buddha energy to start. So I embody the Buddha. So it's not Anjie Cho doing the feng shui consultation. It's I'm bringing in Buddha energy to do the work. So that energy starts to do the work, and then I go to the consultation, and then from that point, when I do the meditation, anything that comes up along the way is information that I apply to the home. So then, so actually a lot of it is like just reading the energy of the person and seeing the layout of the space and seeing how the floor plan works with the Bagua. So it's, and you also get a sense of the person's chi, their personal chi. Like, does this person have low chi? You can also do like a divination to kind of give more insight. So I really go on intuition.
That's so cool. So it's less about, well, it's all of it, but the focus is not just specifically on fixing a space. It's like reading more of the energy and the person's chi in relation to the space.
Yes, exactly. There might be some factors that are across the board problematic, that I'll address, that may not have anything to do with that person's chi. But then you also do evaluate that person's chi, because the way that my teachers taught me feng shui is that there might be a home with quote unquote bad feng shui, but it will be good feng shui for somebody. So you need to, it's not just like a checklist that you go through, but you actually like see what comes up, see what they're asking for. Like, for instance, a lot of people want to know what's the best color for like a front door. And I can give like a boilerplate answer, but when I work with someone, I would look at like, what is your intention? Where is that door located? What colors are you connected to? What colors are you attracted to? Versus, I bring in all of those things. And and then you also asked about the directions. So in BTB Feng Shui, our main way of orienting ourselves in a space depends on the flow of chi, the flow of energy, rather than the directions. The directions are really not emphasized as much. So, but there's lots of classical schools of feng shui that really the most important thing is the directions. And so we look instead, how is the chi flowing into the space? Because since we're in the modern world now, it's not so critical that, like, for instance, your land gets the most sun as for your crops, right? So that's not as important, but there is still, like, especially in New York, a huge value placed on having a sunny home, because all living things grow towards light and yearn for more light. So that is important. But also we emphasize first, like, where is the energy coming from? How is the energy entering the space? So we can look at, like, the street, we can look at, like, the energy coming in from the door. How is it circulating through the space?
You reminded me of when I was looking for apartments in the city, like so long ago, and I had a real estate agent, and I literally would drive him crazy because I was like, I can only look at apartments with windows facing west because after I get home from work, I want to see the sunset. It's very important to me because I won't see the sun until then, and I need that sunset view.
Mm-hmm. I bet they loved you.
He was like, "You're crazy." And I'm like, "No, I need it for my like vitality. I need it for my energy." And also, you reminded me of something that my mom, who's a Christian lady, and she doesn't believe really in astrology or any of that stuff, but when she was repainting her front door, she repainted it red because she said that that brought luck into our home, like prosperity and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that earlier before we started recording, right? How so we both grew up with Protestant parents.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
In a Korean church setting, which is a whole other podcast.
Oh yeah, I also went to the Korean church. So uh and my mom, I was telling you how when I started studying feng shui, my mom was like, we don't believe in that stuff, right? And I
Mhm.
said, okay, yeah, no, yeah, I know. And then a few years go by and she starts calling me, so we're gonna cut down a tree. What should we do? And a few more years go by and she starts disclosing things. So yeah, painting a door red, like red is a very auspicious color in feng shui. And that reminds me of, I don't know if this is a Korean thing, but did my dad, like, although my dad and my mom loved, like, Japanese cookies, and they have the best cookies, right?
Mhm.
And sweets. But then my dad would he said, no, you could never buy a Japanese car, right?
Yes.
So no Japanese cars. And he would even say, like, no Japanese cookies, but then we'd buy them and then he would eat them anyway. So no Japanese cars. And then he would say, why? He's like, do you know why the Chinese love red? Because it's the color of blood. And I was like, okay, Dad, you know. So, but yeah, but that's true actually, because it's a very vital color, and
Mhm.
you could always agree that if you wore red and walked into a room, you would stand out. It's
Mhm.
a very fiery, bright color, and it's also the color of vitality of blood. So
And
it's
it's in the Korean flag. It's half red and half blue, the yin and
the
yang.
yin yang,
Yeah.
yeah. And then there's the trigrams around, which
Mhm.
is
Exactly.
interesting.
Is that connected to the I Ching?
Yeah. So Yeah, in Feng Shui, we also use the trigrams, and
Hmm.
we use I Ching, and it's connected to the five elements and
Hmm.
yin and yang. It's all interconnected.
I was telling Angie that it wasn't that long of a search, but I wanted to interview somebody for feng shui, Chinese astrology, and actually the I Ching. So if you do that, I would love to interview you for that as well. And it just comes out different when it's from an Asian person. And I'm not afraid to say that, okay? I don't know what it is about I Ching that I only found white men talking about the I Ching. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is an Asian divination tool, but correct me if I'm wrong. And then when I was studying about the Korean flag, I was like, that's the I Ching. Those are the
Mhm.
hexagrams. And
Yep.
then, then studying more about like the tiger, because this is the year of the tiger, and how the Korean animal symbol is the tiger. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
You remember the Olympics?
Yes.
What year was that?
It
I
was
don't
like
know.
in the 80s, right? Or 90s.
1984 or something like that. The Tiger Olympic.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Seoul Olympics. Um, yeah, well, my I was I was taught the I Ching by an old white man, old
Of
white
course
Jewish
you
man.
did. Of course you did.
And one of the most popular translations, Willem Baines, I think they're German. They were German. Um, well, we were talking about this. So I it's a little bit distressing. Yes, definitely that, I actually have a meditation, my meditation group is meeting tonight, and I love them, but I go on and I'm like, oh, it's just me, like me, the one Asian young person, and then all old white people teach, practicing Tibetan Buddhist meditation.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit distressing, and that's why my business partner at the Mindful Design School, we luckily we're at a point where now we are able to offer a scholarship. So we decided to offer a BIPOC scholarship, like a work study scholarship. So we just make it more available for people of color. And I was really delighted that so far we've been able to offer that to two Asian um, young people to take the program. Because otherwise my program would be mostly affluent white ladies
Hmm.
taking the program.
Yeah.
So we have to do our part to make this knowledge more available. But I am very grateful, because if it wasn't for the old white people that taught me feng shui and meditation, um, I wouldn't be where I am now. And they actually really respected their Asian teachers.
Hmm.
So I study at Shambhala's, which was founded by Chogyam Trungpa, and he's Tibetan, and so he had many students, most of them Caucasian or American or Canadian, American and Canadian. And then in feng shui, my teachers are all Caucasian Americans, but they very much respected their Asian teachers and have a very Asian approach. And I think that's probably why I did so well, maybe in with feng shui, is because I already had it in my culture and in the way that I worked with the world, to like these things, the way that they taught was not unusual,
Yes.
like through repetition,
Hmm.
through I tell my students, like in Western medicine, they say, see one, do one, teach one. And
Hmm.
that's not the Asian practice. It's like you just copy over and over and over and over again, hundreds of times. So, I was telling you earlier, I study Japanese flower arranging and Japanese tea ceremony. And it's literally, and same thing in Feng Shui, you just practice the same thing over and over and over again. And there's not a lot of room for the Western approach of creativity, but in fact, it allows you more creativity when you can do this repetition and not to assume that you can become an expert at something
It's
after
mastery.
one time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these are all like lifetime, you practice your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually got my Reiki masters from a white woman too, and I really respect her, and I really am so grateful that I learned this tool that really has helped me and my life. And now I get to share it with BIPOC, and now I get to disseminate this information to people who really need it. And you were saying at the beginning that it's almost like an Asian person had to teach a white person to teach an Asian person. Like
Yes.
full circle.
Yeah. So some of my, I remember a few of my teachers, they're just like, this is hilarious that I'm teaching like an Asian practice to an Asian, I as a white person am teaching an Asian practice to an Asian person. But there's, you and I especially are in this interesting place where we have one foot in the West and one foot in the East. And I'll say it's not an easy place because we it's hard to, it's like I don't feel like accepted by Koreans, and I'm not accepted by Americans either.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit different in the US than it is like anywhere else, because like if I go to Europe, they're just like, you're Asian.
Mhm. Mhm.
um but I'm like, no, I'm American. So but it's an interesting thing to have one foot in both, but I think also it really empowers us because we can actually understand both. So we understand the Asian mind, and we understand the American mind, although we're not exclusively one or the other, but we can really become a bridge for that, because more and more, I think people are starting to really value Asian practices, and because it's about cultivating kind of the opposite of maybe the Western viewpoint, like how to say things without saying, like
Mhm.
share information without saying things, how to mindfulness, how to be more aware of your surroundings, and how to be a little bit more quiet and more peaceful and more focused.
Yes, there's a saying in Taoism called Wu Wei,
Hmm.
which is like non-action, but in the Western mind, we think of non-action as like not doing anything, but it actually just means to cultivate a way of being in the flow of like, and I visualize that in my head of being a leaf in like a streaming flow of river, and
Hmm.
the river is carrying you, so there's no point in resisting the current, but you can just kind of like flow with life. And obviously we have free will, but it's to not have resistance.
Yeah,
I yeah.
one way I look at that too is non-action is being okay with not reacting. Like for
Mhm.
instance, what I find is that a lot of people, especially people who are attracted to metaphysical esoteric practices, they really want to help other people. So they're like, let me give you some advice. Or they really want to, because they also really want to be understood and they want to help other people. And so then they're always trying to fix everything.
Mhm.
And one way that I look at non-action is not trying to fix everything, like
Mhm.
not trying to fix anyone else, letting someone make their own mistakes, letting someone misunderstand you, and being okay with that, and that ties into this being okay with being silent too. Like, you don't always have to correct everyone, you don't always have to fix everything, you don't always have to explain yourself. You can be okay with someone completely misunderstanding you, and it'll be okay.
Wow, that is really hard to do.
I know, but I'm trying. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you gotta like bite your tongue and just let other people be like that. But this is something that I'm really working on practicing, and like a lot of my teachers kind of challenge us with this, like not responding to someone and
Mhm.
just letting someone have their experience. But I think that's like, for me personally, when I like am in a group and I share something and then someone says, oh yeah, me too, and then they start talking about their own story, it actually shuts me down,
Mhm.
and I feel like they're kind of erasing my experience.
Mhm.
It's just like, just sit with the things, let things land. Let people share things, and you don't have to give feedback, you don't have to respond, and you don't have to explain yourself to someone.
Mhm. That's like a very American thing, to center yourself, to constantly want people to see you and hear you. And it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. I think all of us crave that so deeply because it gives us a sense of security to be seen and heard and accepted. But sometimes that can override somebody else's experience and sharing.
Mhm, mhm. But there's also like, again, that like trusting that things will shake out, like it will fall in the way of the Tao, right?
Mhm.
That trusting that the world will take care of it, that everything will work itself out, that needs to be worked out, and not just not everyone having to say me too, and let's talk about it. so but yeah, like I think in my life, I've felt the closest to people when we've been in silence together, like during like a week-long silent meditation retreat. You just really start to understand people in a different way.
So the talking thing is a very American thing. The talking thing is a very like, I need to assert my stance and have to take up space. But the listening thing is, I think, more of an Asian thing, but it's mistaken as passive.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's because but it's like, if we talk about the I Ching,
Mhm.
it's being quiet is maybe a little bit more receptive. It's more yin, but it's more subtle, right? It's like the moon.
Oh my God. So obviously I'm American, and I think I was more in the shadow aspect of being American for a really long time. And when I first went to Reiki, my first Reiki one, our Reiki master each gave us like a card with our mission, or our like, in yoga we call it a sankalpa, like our promise. And mine was stillness. And I was like, oh man, like some people's were so cool, like wisdom and, like all these cool things. And mine was stillness. And now I understand why, because in the stillness is what you were just saying, like the yin and the receptiveness, which I'm still trying to work on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is an importance in a- in action as well, right? You need both the yin and the yang. But I'm personally working with, like, how can I embrace being more Asian and being totally okay with being quiet and being the quiet person? Because during the pandemic, when all the racism issues came up very strongly, that's something that I felt like was really important, that I just wanted to be okay with being a quiet Asian person. And
Mhm.
because I just always felt like people, I just felt like people were um, always pushing me to, yeah, like talk more, be like, have a stronger voice.
Mhm.
And I remember when I first started teaching, um, one of someone that was in a mentorship position told me like, oh, well, you need to work on your voice. And I got really, really upset. And and I'm just working with like, how can I just be me and be okay with that, because this is how I grew up culturally,
Mhm.
to not be super focused on being an aggressive speaker, talker. I'm not an aggressive talker.
Mhm.
And to practice these and more practice these Asian arts, like tea ceremony and flower arranging, where and meditation, where you actually like you're not supposed to talk at all. You're not supposed to talk at all. It's not about talking. None of it's about talking. If you talk, you get in trouble in class. Like my
Mhm.
teachers are always like, shh. And you don't correct the teacher, right?
Right.
You just like today, this morning I went to tea ceremony class. You just say hi, hi, hi. You just agree to every, you just, even if they make a mistake,
Mhm.
you just agree.
Yeah.
Because but what's the point in like arguing and saying, oh, by the way, you did this wrong? It's like, well, like, oh, maybe they missed something, but you don't have to, again, you don't have to vocalize everything.
And there is this difference in American culture to Asian culture where we actually have reverence for our elders. Like we actually care about what they say.
Yes, well, what gets me too is like a lot of, I guess we're going to talk about Asians and Americans, but like how Americans are like and because I do these Asian practices like meditation, and where especially in meditation, people will say, well, I don't want to bow to anybody. And I'm kind of like, well, I grew up bowing, and it's not, you don't bow to someone because you think they're smarter than you, or they're better than you bow to someone simply because they're older than you.
Hmm.
You respect their experience. You respect their age and the natural hierarchy that occurs in on in this world. So you simply bow and to acknowledge the other person. But then some Americans, or in the Western world, some people they think, oh, I'm like being passive to someone, and that's not even what it's about.
Yeah. Oh, like being submissive.
Yeah, being submissive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting perspective.
It's very interesting, especially since like that's just what we grew up doing. Um,
I know. I know.
did
I know.
I ask you enough questions about feng shui and how you use feng shui? What are the benefits of feng shui? I feel like you made one point and I took us off into a different direction.
Mm. Well, let's talk more about feng shui. Well, why don't do you have anything that you've always wondered about with feng shui?
I guess like the whole point of feng shui is the flow of energy and really optimizing your space with your energy so that energy flows.
Hmm.
And some reasons why somebody would do that, maybe like you were saying, you get three wishes. So maybe one of my wishes is to call in my soulmate. So if I was to say that for you, even though like you can't see my space, you're not putting on your feng shui hat, what are some things I can like look out for?
Hmm. Well, I could put on my feng shui hat for this. So,
Oh,
okay. Okay, so that's actually a very, like, one of the more popular things that people look for. And is this true? You're looking for your soulmate?
yes, I am.
Okay.
Hear me, universe. I know one of the things I can do is probably move out of my parents' house, but
Oh, well, no, not necessarily.
oh, okay, there's hope.
No, not feng shui wise. And if you think about when feng shui was developed, most people lived with their parents quite a long time. They lived in family, many generational family situations, right? Um, so, okay, so one thing to look at is your bedroom. So in feng shui, we look at the bedroom very closely because it's the space that you spend the most time in. Like if you think about it, you sleep in your bedroom, so you spend quite a bit of passive time in a yin state asleep. So the energy of your bedroom really affects you. So you want to look at the layout of your bedroom. So one thing that you can look at is like what is the size of your bed? Do you have a full size or a twin bed, or you have a full? Okay. So full size bed is good. Sometimes people, especially maybe if they move back home, may have a twin bed, and that's not so good for a partnership because there's only room for one, right? So you want to energetically create space for your future partner, your future soulmate. So you want to have a big enough bed. And then you want to have, do you have a nightstand on each side of your bed?
Wait, a full is like almost a queen, or is it like bigger than a twin? I think I have a twin then.
Twin is only for one person.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, okay. So
Well, yeah, 'cause
okay.
I went back to the room that I
Yes.
grew up in, and it was a twin bed. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what
And
you
you're
can
like,
upgrade. Yeah. Because because like energetically, there's no place for a partner, right?
yeah, that's true.
Unless you want to squeeze together on a twin bed, and then that's not going to work, right? I mean, and it's not like literally like, I mean,
It's
of course,
energetically, yes.
literally you can't fit in, but I mean, I don't know if you want to bring your boyfriend over to your parents' house, but yeah, so energetically there's no space. So if you want to invite in a partner, you should definitely have a bigger bed. So you can upgrade your bed at your parents' house, and you could still come home to that with when you're married or whatever, and you'll stay in that bed with your partner. So you want a bed that's big enough for two, and but not too big. So like a king size bed might be too big, and sometimes king size beds come in two pieces, and that actually is the separation, because there are two pieces put together, so there's a divide between the partners. So really like a queen size is good, or a full size bed. And then you want to have like a nightstand on each side, because you need to energetically create the space for your partner.
Okay.
So a lot of single people like will only, even though they have a big bed, they might just have like one pillow, like one night, you know what I mean? Like, but like you need a pillow for your future partner too, like pretend that they're there, and they need a nightstand too, and they need a light too.
They sure do.
Yes, so they need a place to put down their glass of water and their book, and then also you want to have like space on both sides of the bed, like at the foot of the bed. You want the bed against the wall, the headboard against the wall, and then you want to have space on both sides. So sometimes people push their bed up against the wall to make the most space. So like I actually have a good feng shui story about meeting my husband. So when I started studying feng shui, I was dating my husband, and I was like, in a shared apartment roommate situation in the Lower East Side, and I had a full bed, but it was pushed up against the wall. And then when I found out that you need to have space for each partner on each side, I moved my bed immediately. And now we're married. And it was interesting because when I moved my bed, my therapist was like, wow, Anjie, this is the first time I've seen you make a change in your environment for somebody else. So I think that's huge. And then also I looked back and I reflected upon it, and I realized when I had my bed up against the wall, I would have my boyfriends sleep on the inside.
To
And
trap them?
yes, that's what exactly. Like I would be trying to trap my boyfriends in, because like who wants to sleep on the inside, right? You have to like, and you're not even in your own bedroom. You have to like crawl over the other person, not wake them up to go to the bathroom. So it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and it's not a balanced relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So one, like for me, this isn't for everyone, but like you were thinking what I was thinking, I'm like, I was trying to trap my boyfriends in,
Mm-hmm.
and it was also a very uncomfortable situation. So give someone freedom, give someone the space. So, but you have to energetically create that space for your partner in your bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you have anything under your bed, like storage?
Yeah.
What else do you have under there?
Sweaters, just sweaters.
Okay, good. Sweaters, not bad.
Yeah.
But some people keep like letters from exes,
Mm.
emotionally charged things under the bed. Even like shoes can be problematic, or suitcases, because it's very energetic energy. Now that's mostly problematic for someone who can't sleep that well, because when you're sleeping over, when you're sleeping on your bed, and whatever you're sleeping over, again, you're sleeping over that while you're in a passive yin state. So all the energy of whatever's under the bed is affecting you. So if you have emotionally charged items there, or things that represent your exes, or being stuck in a relationship, that can subconsciously keep you from moving forward in any relationships or opening up to anyone, because you are like sleeping with all this baggage right next to you.
Yes, that makes so much sense.
Yes. And then also, like, is it your child? Yeah, you might want to also get a new mattress or sage the mattress. I mean, you're going to get a larger mattress,
Yeah.
but there's like some people also keep like, they have like a bed that has the energy of their ex,
Mm-hmm.
and the energy is still there. And depending on how that relationship ended, it still can affect any future relationships and future partnerships. So yeah,
And the bedroom should just have a bed, right? Like there should be nothing else in there.
ideally, you want to have a bedroom dedicated, yes, to sleeping and rest, and your romantic stuff. And you want to try to keep work, have a little bit of boundary between work and sleep time,
Mm-hmm.
at like act yin and yang time, right? But some people don't have that option to, especially now that a lot of people are working from home, not everyone has the option to have a separate place for their office or
Mm-hmm.
their desk. So you do the best you can with what you have.
Mm-hmm. I will let you know, Angie. I will let you know when I get a new bed, what happens to my romantic life.
Yes, and one let me think, one more thing that you can do. So in Feng Shui, that we use an energetic map called the Feng Shui Bagua map, and it has different sections, and there's one related to relationships. And so you can look at what's happening in that corner of your bedroom. So if you stand in the doorway of your bedroom, the far right corner. So what's happening in your far right corner of your bedroom?
There is a dresser with a TV on it.
Okay. And is it like does it feel organized, or what is the dresser old? Tell me about the dresser.
The dresser's old and it's been there since I was a little girl. So it's ancient.
And where did it and did it was it new when you received it?
I'm not sure actually. I'll ask my mom. She might have gotten it from, like, she probably bought it when we were little and she was trying to furnish the house,
Hmm.
but it's just as old as I am.
Okay. So, that might be okay, but maybe it needs a little like saging to kind of clear it of any, because it may have some residual energy from whoever owned it before, or anyone else that stayed in your room before.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing is that so you have clothes and a TV, and then do you use the TV? It's okay.
Yeah, like sometimes when I watch movies, I'll watch it on there, but
Okay. So that seems pretty neutral. Sometimes people have things like, they're like, oh, that's where I throw all my laundry or something. So you can kind of look at like what's happening in that area. And then you can also activate that area with like some intention. Like you can bring in things that represent relationships, like maybe like an image of a couple that you find is like really inspiring. Like I have a client that like had like put a picture of Barack and Michelle in her relationship area, because
Yeah.
that was kind of like a relationship that she thought was inspirational for her.
Hmm.
Or you can put like a pair of things, like a pair of rose quartz
Hmm.
to in that area to activate your relationships. And then you can, just take some care to go through like the dresser to make sure you don't have anything like it, keep it organized, you don't have anything old that doesn't fit you anymore. And just go through and give it some attention, which is like mindfulness, bringing attention to that space and taking care to dust it and clean behind the dresser and just making sure it's not forgotten.
Got it. Thank you for these tips.
You're welcome.
So, what have you got going on? What if people want to work with you? How can they work with you and get in touch with you?
Um, Wait, actually, I had one more thought too.
Yes.
So if you also have a friend or someone that you feel also has like a relationship, like a successful relationship that you like has they've met their soulmate and you really find that that they inspire you as a couple that you would like to have in your life, you can like if they have like younger people now, everyone has plants, right?
Hmm.
So you could ask them for like a cutting of one of their plants. So things that they might have in their home would hold their chi. And so you can ask for like a little bit of their chi as kind of like a starter to put
Oh, I
into
love
your area. Yeah. So like for instance, I have a big rubber tree plant that was gifted to me from a friend who moved away, and her and her husband are super successful. Like they have like blogs that they sold to like AOL, and so I think it has really good successful business chi that
that.
you can keep, you can use like as a little starter. So yeah, like asking for, if you happen to have a friend that has a really, you find that they're in a good relationship, you can, and you want to make sure that they actually, you feel that they actually have a good strong relationship, ask them for a little cutting of a plant and then plant it, and then you cultivate it into your own with
Mm.
the intention that you also want to cultivate, sprout, and grow a relationship and put it in that corner.
I could see couples like selling their little sprouts.
Oh, no.
This is our love chi.
Oh no.
But I really love that idea. And I'm like kind of thinking like who do I feel has a partnership like that? Wow. A lot of my friends have just recently been getting divorced, so
Okay, so don't ask them for
no.
money.
Those are such interesting tips and things I like never even thought of. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But yeah, so if anyone wants to work with me, I have a feng shui school, the Mindful Design Feng Shui School, and we teach feng shui there. My partner, also Laura, we teach a feng shui certification. We also have a membership opening up the first week of February, but it's only for that week.
Hmm.
And um, it's called the Inner Circle. And so that's for someone who doesn't want to be a practitioner but wants feng shui. Like we have a floor plan review, we have a Q&A, and we have like an oracle reading every month.
Hmm.
And I'm also available for private consultations, and you can see my services at holisticspaces.com. Oh, but most importantly, we have a feng shui podcast called the Holistic Spaces Podcast, which people can easily just access that.
And learned so much more about feng shui. That's so cool.
Hmm. Yeah, every week. It's a lot. It's a lot to
Yeah, and
keep up
I
with.
feel like we didn't even scratch the surface.
I
This is
know. We'll have to have a follow up.
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation. I'm so glad that I got to know you at such a deep level. And was there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to share?
No, no, but it was very fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I'll link everything in the show notes so you can find out more about Angie and the work that she does. Thank you so much, Angie. This was such a beautiful conversation.
You're welcome. Thank you.